Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'll show you how to make a cute little pencil skirt. To start off, you can use any fitted skirt pattern. The one I'm using is from the 70s, so it really doesn't matter. After deciding on what skirt length I was comfortable with, I used various round objects to draw a scalloped edge. The important part is to make the edges fit together. Once I was happy with my design, I cut it out and we are ready to start on the skirt. I will be using this cute corduroy fabric. The one thing to keep in mind when working with corduroy or velvet fabrics is to always cut the pieces in the same direction. Typically you want to be able to stroke the velvet downwards when wearing it, or else you'll slide off your chair. Once I've determined the direction of the fabric, I fold it and lay down the back skirt panel on the fabric fold. I started up marking it with chalk, but it wasn't very visible, so I ended up switching to a pen. I made sure to mark all my seams and dots on both sides of the skirt. I'll be making a button-up closure in the center front, so to be able to do this I'm adding an extra 4.5 cm plus seam allowances. First we start by pinning and sewing all the dots. We iron the seams flat before pressing it to the side. I always learned that darts are pressed away from the heart, but oftentimes it will look better if you do the opposite. Just make sure you do the same on the whole garment so it looks even. I carefully scraped at the fabric to get some of the hair out of the seam. Because of the scalloped hem, I decided that the easiest would be to fully line the skirt. This can be a bit fiddly, and if you're a beginner I would suggest using bias binding on the hem instead. I sewed dots in the lining, same as the fashion fabric.
It's new. This is a brand new needle.
I might have used the wrong size of needle since it started pulling out threads of the lining fabric. Nevertheless, I kept going. To the lining I'm not adding any fabric to the center front, instead I remove the seam allowances there. This will make sense later. This next step is optional, but I decided to add some simple pockets to the front of the skirt. To one side of my pocket bag I added a facing that was top stitched down. The other side of the pocket bag is stitched to the side front panel. The seam is ironed and the seam allowance is pressed to one side before it's stitched down to the lining. Then I can close the bottom and the top of the pocket bag. To the center front, we're then adding a piece of iron-on interfacing. This is to make it behave and be more durable. I can now pin up the side seams and stitch the skirt together, and we do the same for the lining. Then I pin the lining to the skirt at the center fronts and stitch them together. The front is folded 1.5 cm from the center front, and the shorter lining will allow for the fashion fabric to work as a facing. Then everything is ironed right sides in and pinned well before we stitch the scallops. This step is a bit fiddly and wasn't that easy to film. I also sewed most of the top of the skirt, leaving a gap in the back to turn it inside out. Then we can trim the seam allowances down and clip into the curves to make it lie nicely once we turn it right sides out. I spent a long time ironing all the scallops to make sure they were laying perfectly before moving on to the next step. Since the centre back is a little curved, I clip into the seam allowance before turning it inwards and pinning it down. I chose to stitch this down by hand. And allow me to share some sewing joy with you. Look who just got a new light! Yay! I'm proud of myself too. It's because I've had bad fuses in my house for a while, which has made several things short circuit, which is what has killed this light a couple of times. So eventually I just didn't bother to get a new one because of it. The fuse system has been sort of fixed, so now I've gotten a new light and it's so good. I can see again. It's amazing. Next step now is to get one of those magnifying lights. The one that old people uses, because I'm old.
It's an investment for the future, don't you think? Cut.
Now that the lining is in place, I went back in and made a few back and forth stitches to the top and bottom of the pockets to secure them. Finally, we're adding the closure, and today we're using snap buttons. Since this is what will keep the skirt closed, make sure to get some good ones. For that, I prefer the ones you hammer in and not the ones that are sewn. This should have been the last step, but because of my lining and the fact that I didn't add a waistband, this skirt will not lay nicely when worn. The fashion fabric is constantly moving and bulging, and to fix this I started by adding a seam to the top of the skirt. This helped a little, but since the corduroy is a little stretchy, the seam ended up looking stretched out. And so the last thing I did was to add a piece of ribbon to the inside of the skirt to make it hold its shape. This fixed all the problems I was having, and I guess to avoid the same problem as me, I would add some interfacing to the fashion fabric or maybe some twill tapes to the inside of the skirt. I've already gotten a lot of use out of this skirt, and I love how it looks. Lately I've focused more on making clothes that I will actually wear and try and practice a bit of tailoring along the way. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to follow me for more videos in the future. Best of luck with your own projects. Until next time.